Our speaker tonight is Brandon Creighton, and Brandon is running for Agriculture Commissioner, but we know him better as the House District Representative from Conroe, don't we? This picture here is from a few weeks ago at the Kingwood Tea Party. They had a bunch of people coming in to give speeches, and Brandon was there, and he made this presentation that was, people loved it, absolutely loved it. Presented a flak jacket to Senator Cruz. Can you imagine? Yes, he does need it. But you know what? I wondered if it was used, because we had just gone through the House session with Brandon, and that was very rough at times. It was very rough at times because you have there a group of conservatives and you've got the ruling class folks in Austin. And Brandon was in the thick of it. Brandon was right there with the conservatives, but also elected to be the Republican caucus chair and had to deal with everybody and negotiate all of this. And I will just add one little part to it. We were very active on the issue of transportation and funding on the state level in this last legislative session. And it's hard to get to Austin. We had to get in touch with various people to figure out how we could move things along. And Brandon was so helpful, so accessible. And I tell you, it's very hard to get a hold of people when things are so fast and furious as they often are in Austin and in Washington. So I just wanted to say thank you for that. I really, really appreciated it. You got information to people in a timely manner, and although we haven't resolved where things are going on transportation or water, a variety of other things, we will get there, and it's by having strong legislative partners that will do that. And by activities like this, that you guys will be active on campaigns. You're gonna get to meet most of the statewide candidates will come through here because they need to get your support. Montgomery County is really key. And Brandon has an advantage because we've known him for a long time. So with that, actually, another representative that you guys were very active with is Steve Toth from the Woodlands, and he wants to say a few things about his own experience with Brandon in this session. Here's Steve.
March 8th, I'm walking off the floor. We had convened an hour or two earlier, and as I'm walking off the floor, the speaker's coming at me in the opposite direction. He's got a blue button down, and he's looking very casual, and he's coming my way, and I said, "Hey, Mr. Speaker, looking casual, looks good." And he said, "Like it that way." It's all he really said, a big smile on his face. And then my phone goes off. Reach into my pocket, pull it out, and it's Brandon. And man, was he mad. He was just fit to be tied. I had never heard you so mad before. And he said, "I just got off the phone with the speaker." And I said, "I just saw him." And he said, in the trib, he said, "We cannot just say no to the expansion of Medicaid." And he said to the speaker, he said, "Oh yes, we can." That's the kind of leadership that we need in Austin. And folks, here's my rejection letter from United Healthcare saying that my insurance policy for my business has been done away with. Mr. Obama, didn't you say that we wouldn't lose our health care coverage if we liked it? Didn't you say we won't lose our doctor if we like it? Didn't he say that? Folks, if you lose your coverage, you lose your doctor because all these people are going to get pushed into the exchange. And too many people have acquiesced. Ben, thank you for what you said, because too many Republicans are raising the white flag before we've ever had a chance to go to battle. And we are crying out in this country and in this state for leaders that are willing to pay the political cost to do the right thing. And Brandon is that man, and we're thankful that you're with us. You have to stay behind the line here or else you get feedback.
Okay, it's great to be with you. How's everybody? Good? Yeah. Thank you, Steve. You know, Steve was such a blessing coming into the Texas House. We certainly needed a big class of strong conservatives coming in. He led his class. All of you are familiar with the conservatives that came in, much due to your hard work and all that you were doing, boots on the ground. And Steve carried, as you all know, the Firearms Protection Act, pushing back on illegal confiscation of firearms in Texas. Went to battle on the House floor in debate, which a lot of new members do not do until their second or sometimes third session. Passed that bill off the House floor and sent it over to the Senate. So, yes, I mean, he was so strong in so many ways, and will continue that leadership going forward for the next round of conservatives that come into the House. And that's what it's all about. We have to add true conservative seats in the State House and in the State Senate as the policymakers for the state of Texas, because Texas is the last stand, right? Right. And the policies that are enacted, the policies that are fostered, the ideas that are manifested, the political ideologies that are embraced in that building between the House and the Senate, and what the governor eventually signs or vetoes, is going to define us as a state, not just in the next generation. It's going to define us immediately. And we were faced with that with Medicaid expansion and accepting Obamacare in Texas for the portion that could render Texas financially insolvent. And we took that battle head on, shoulders squared, took it right between the eyes. We had Republican and Democrat opposition considering adopting a Medicaid expansion in Texas, and we were successful, Steve and I working together with the other conservatives, in not only calling for a caucus vote where we knew every Republican and exactly where they stood in making them make a decision, yes or no, to Medicaid expansion and expanding the population of Medicaid recipients under Obamacare, or, where were they going to be? At that point, we took a vote for the caucus to reject that concept and that premise, but when the budget came up for a vote on the House floor, I carried a directive to put directly in the budget for our House conferees for when they went over to the Senate to negotiate on the differences between our two budgets, that Medicaid expansion language could not be placed in that document and sent back to the House floor. So you're sending us over there to stand for something, right? And to stand on principle and the ideas that we promote and we put as promises in our campaign brochures. And you expect us to be the exact kind of leader and representative that we promise we will be, not just 6 months into office, not just 3 years into office, but however long we're in office, the same person that we presented ourselves to be when we first ran for office, correct? Yes. And time after time, we are seeing less and less backbone and more bending to Austin lobbyists and Washington influence and the process itself, and somehow forgetting where we came from and what those at home that sent us there are telling us to accomplish. With this next class and those that will back Steve up, we will have more and more successes in the Texas House. I feel confident. Again, it's a privilege for me to be before you. I just want to quickly cover a few things related to what I'm working on next, which is in turning the page. I'm leaving the House as the House Republican Caucus Chairman and as a 4-term member of the legislature representing Conroe, Lake Conroe, part of East Montgomery County, and a small part of Kingwood for most of the years that I've been in office, to run for the Agriculture Commissioner's Office of Texas, now that Todd Staples has announced to run for Lieutenant Governor. So we are potentially going to have, if the Lieutenant Governor and the incumbent that's in place there is not successful, we potentially may have, for the first time since Reconstruction, a complete turnover in statewide offices in Texas. Are we ready for a new round of conservative leadership? The people that we put in place, and it starts with all of those interviewing for the job, we have to see a track record there. We cannot just see promises. We have to know, as we've been let down time and time again, that we see commitment, we see a record, and we see something beyond promises on a piece of paper, because that is letting us down. Senator Cruz has many surrounding him in the Senate that made promises to do something other than they actually did when he stood on the floor for 21 hours, right? Right. And he did not eventually have the support that was needed. The president said, "We will not negotiate with you." And my contention is that the American people will say, when all of these folks run again, "We will not negotiate with you." Because the best thing that President Obama has done to create jobs in America is to carry on the policies that he is carrying on for Democrats and many Republicans to follow him, and that is going to create jobs in the United States House. It's going to create jobs in the United States Senate, and it is going to create one job in the White House that we are going to effectively handle with your help the next time around. But back to Texas, we have to keep Texas strong. So many demographers and political pundits say, if we lose Texas, what's going to happen? We are not going to have another Republican in the White House, possibly for a generation. The Agriculture Commissioner's Office handles the business of the state of Texas that is $100 billion in economic output. It's second only to oil and gas as an economic industry in the state of Texas, for all the synergies that it creates, for all of food and fiber that goes into the materials that we use every day, the food that reaches our table in Texas, across the country, and across the world from a trade aspect. It's a very important position if you're concerned about water. It's a very important position if you're concerned about property rights and the unfairness of eminent domain and condemnation. It's very important if you want to have someone with a vision for the most, or the second most, or biggest economic output for Texas to oil and gas, that will also show a record of fighting back against the Obama administration. There are two principles and two key federal acts that threaten Texas businesses and Texas jobs the most. Obamacare, which we've all been talking about, and the EPA for this nation, the largest environmental protection agency in the world. Texas set aside 19 unique reservoir sites to begin planning for our future water supply as we work to and grow to double our population by the year 2060. The first one that we tried to start permitting just a couple of years ago, the U.S. Fisheries Department struck it with one signature. No congressional approval, straight out of the West Wing, infiltrated by environmentalists that now work in those agencies. What happens with the next 18 reservoirs that we try to permit in Texas? What if all of them are stricken? We have to have a plan in that respect. So your next round of statewide officials, they have to be conservative, they have to have a vision and a plan, and they have to be able to be at the table with policymakers like Steve to effectively work out these policies as we hopefully count on our next Attorney General to carry the torch that Greg Abbott has carried in working to sue the federal government and to say no when we need to say no. Most people say, and just acquiesce to the bad news we see on the news every day, that that's just the way it works. That's just the way it is. And we are Texans. We have an independent spirit. We are not going to fall in that category. And we are not just going to say no. We are going to stand up for what's right. Right?
Right.
Yes. So I wanted to come in this evening and talk to you a little bit about the importance of the Agriculture Commissioner's race. The Ag Commissioner, the Railroad Commissioner that manages oil and gas, the Railroad Commissioner's Office that manages oil and gas for Texas, the Comptroller that handles our vendors and our accounts and our pocketbook after we establish the budget. These offices are so very important, not because those individuals could someday lead to another higher office. They're important for exactly what each and every one of those offices do for you and for all Texans on a daily basis. So I'm going to come back again, visit further, bring some more information on the importance of the office, but I just want to say thank you for hearing me out, and for those of you that live in District 16 in the part of Montgomery County that I currently represent, thank you for allowing me to be in office. And I will show, and I commit to you, that my track record in the legislature for 19,000 votes, I'm consistently one of the most conservative voting records over that trend, and you can divide them up as close as a golf score to the thousandth of a point over that period of time. In carrying and authoring the Texas Sovereignty Resolution in '09, to carrying tort reform legislation, loser pay legislation, the Small Business Relief Act, to authoring the Balanced Budget Amendment to Congress that was one of Governor Perry's emergency items, to carrying and eventually getting in the budget a directive to not accept Medicaid expansion uncalled for under Obamacare for Texas, I feel I have a proven track record, a conservative track record, a record to be proud of, and that you can, in supporting me, feel confident that I will carry that forward into a statewide office, and I'd be proud to represent you in that capacity. So thank you very much. And again, we have time for questions. Is that appropriate within the program? Yes.
Yeah, I was on that toxic well we got here.
Yes.
And
Texcom well.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's right.
Pressure was no good.
I have battled that specific issue for several years, yes.
Okay, is that going to fall into the agricultural commissioner's job, or is that, are you just doing a service job?
Well, the agriculture commissioner's position can be at the table on policy outright. And so if it deals with our water supply, if it's an issue that affects our water supply, or it's an issue through the second largest environmental protection agency in the world, which is the Texas TCEQ, Texas Commission on Environmental Quality, correct, then that statewide office can, in my opinion, be very influential there. And I've found out, and all of us have found out in battling that injection well, that at every turn, money and influence and special interest can cut your knees out from under you. Steve and I can both tell you that in that arena over there, you can't get your feelings hurt because you get your head knocked off, you get knocked down, you get back up, and you keep going, because as Ben said, it's the principle of the matter. So the fight's not over with the Texcom well. We can feel that they're pinched because they filed suit because of some actions that Montgomery County took to limit their access. We were successful in providing some research that enabled the county to work in that direction, and J.D. Lambright will be doing a great job in that respect too. We've got a good man there. Any other questions? Anything on anyone's mind? That's, yes.
About 2 minutes explain to people what carrying the bill is and how important that function is in getting it.
Yes, explaining how it is to, what it takes to carry a bill. A bill is just an idea that one of your local representatives would come up with through your input, and to craft that into a legislative measure. It can be 3 sentences, it can be as thick as a New York phone book. And to effectively get that bill filed, it gets assigned to a committee that has jurisdiction over that subject matter. And the author of the bill, if I authored the bill, I would go before that committee and state my case. And all the committee members, friendly, some unfriendly, some for me right when I walk in the door, some violently against me, would ask me many questions related to why that bill should pass beyond the committee and eventually go to the House floor for debate. So it's not an easy process. It's designed for all of the politicians' great ideas as they try to be, through self-preservation, clever and to impress you at home. We come up with many ideas. 5,000 bills last session. We probably passed around 1,200. It is designed to defeat most of those ideas and those measures. When it's your passionate issue, you don't like that. When it is a bad idea, like a state income tax, you're very thankful for it. So from that, we have to just have involvement, because your voices carry the gas in the engine and push forward for a lot of those measures that start out with crickets chirping and they pick up steam very, very quickly through the grassroots. Yes, Julie?
What does the agriculture commission look like?
What would the Ag Commission office look like? The Agriculture Commission office, the Texas Department of Agriculture look like under my leadership at the end of my first term? Is that what you're asking? Yes. Well, first and foremost, we have a water problem in Texas. So depending on the outcome of the referendum vote, that vote, may not ultimately be successful, and we may not have the money to leverage our statewide water plant. So that position will have to go to work working on solutions. If that vote is successful and we have a $2 billion corpus to enable $25 billion in leveraged projects, debt basically, to enable big projects that we haven't been able to do in the past, to happen, then we will be, as we find when government has money, we will be even more challenged to try to negotiate the priorities among and across this state, because at that point we have a big regional battle in priority for how we solve water problems and who it benefits. Whenever you see a $25 billion number, you've got to wonder who it's going to benefit, and hopefully it's going to be the people and not industry or special interests. But being able to be at the table and to call out specific solutions and work to negotiate those solutions for water would be one of my #1 priorities. And I worked on the House Natural Resources Committee for 6 years leading up as a training ground to what this position will call for there. Second, we see time and time again federal policies, especially from the EPA, attack fracking for oil and gas, attack our businesses, and especially our farmers and ranchers that are providing this $100 billion in economic output for what is essentially a $1 trillion economy, 10% of our economy. And they have enough stress alone to deal with without the West Wing directives on another mussel, another salamander, another clam, another organic this or that, a pesticide regulation here and there. All of that affects you eventually at HEB. Kroger, if anybody here works for Kroger. So what that position can do through amicus briefs and through policy and using that pulpit would be to say no when we need to say no, and to help those that have DC survival kits, like I gave Ted Cruz here, that are in Washington that need someone from the state of Texas in a position like that to be able to step up and say, this is exactly what's happening to families and businesses on the ground, and we're not going to tolerate it. So from that extent, having a window in relationships into the policymakers in the Capitol, knowing how to effectively prevent unintended consequences for that large economic driver. I see protecting our economy, protecting our jobs, saying no to the Obama administration, and solving water problems as my number one, 2, 3, and 4 priorities. We will also be very effective and involved in international trade aspects as the Ag Commissioner works directly with Taiwan on a beef contract, or the Ukraine on a wheat contract, or within certain embargoes where our products go all over the world. And very important there from a job creation and an import-export trade balance. So, yes?
This may go back further than, I go back a pretty good while, but you bring up something that alerted my mind to. Jim Hightower, the populist Democrat, was there in that position, right?
Jim Hightower was the Ag Commissioner, the last Democrat, and Rick Perry took him out.
What a great guy. But there was a lot of difference between Perry and what Jim Hightower was doing. Do you want to get into that and sort of tell us what he was doing wrong, according to Perry, the wisdom of the day, or do you know?
From a historical standpoint, I don't know what Perry came at Hightower on. Perry switched parties at the right time, came after Hightower. Hightower was a lot less agriculture and a lot more a radio personality. And I know that Rick Perry ran on some real strong economic and fundamental principles that are not different than what we've talked about today. But you bring up a good point that we've got to have someone in office that has knowledge and a history of agriculture in mind and under their belt as a track record. My family's been involved in ranching heritage in Montgomery County for 8 generations. We farmed tobacco and cotton along the San Jacinto River before statehood. We transitioned in the 40s to a cattle and forestry operation that's still in existence today. And my wife and I raise F1 Hudgens Gray Brahman cattle in Madisonville on our ranch now. So we're going to have agriculture in mind. Hightower ran into the problem that he did not, because that understanding and the link to the suburban and metropolitan interest and the job creation aspects are very, very fundamental to the position itself to protect our economy.
Okay, well, Ben knows the answer to the question.
Ben's the historian? Okay.
Real fast.
He's threw you under the bus, Ben.
I assume you're not taking position anywhere, you're neutral on those who are running for your office. So do you have, for those who are you don't have any position on
Who would be my successor for state representative? Well, the filing deadline's not passed yet. We've got a filing deadline that would be sometime in December, so it's a good question. We've got really good conservative people running, but I don't know that a cousin might not jump. I don't have any idea. So I'm staying safe there because I don't want my sister-in-law or my aunt or anybody mad at me. But I can tell you, because of who is sitting in this room, not because of anything to do with me, it will be a strong conservative voice to help Steve Toth in Austin on Montgomery County's behalf. I know Ted has a lot to offer and has a great message. I know a few others in the race, Will Metcalf and a couple of others, and I think that will be an interview for the job that all of you will be, as you always have been, very, very capable and confident in recommending. So from that, thank you so much for your questions. Yes, one more.
I have a question about Agenda 21. Has that taken hold at all in Texas, and if so, would it fall under the Agriculture Commissioner?
We watch the agenda really close. We hear a lot of things on progress, much because of what you send to us as office holders in your research. So from mobility planning, from the agricultural side, and national concepts and national planning that's one size fits all, I'm always very, very skeptical of all of that. And there may be some synergy, or there may be some concepts that make sense from a bigger picture, but I'm going to let Texas run Texas, guy. So none of that sells well for me. So, okay, thank you very much for your time. I'll be back to visit, and it would be a privilege and an honor for my wife and I to have your support and your family's help for this race. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Brandon.